How we doing, everyone? Welcome to a more, normal module? Something you might feel more comfortable with, something you might have a little bit more history with. Welcome to branding, the first of 2 weeks of branding. I think branding is a really big deal. Happens to be something that I enjoy researching a whole lot about. Javier is also a branding guru himself. Very interested in hearing his thoughts next Monday when we have our second of the two branding discussions. But something you will realize, or if you haven't realized throughout all these articles, is these articles tend to have a very Dr. Dano-esque view of branding. Meaning, this is more about branding in the bottom-up world. This is more about looking at the brand more from the consumer's perspective and not just the corporation's perspective. For instance, 15, 20 years ago, if we looked at branding was the P&G model where we would just have Mr. Clean, and the brand executives and the brand manager of the Mr. Clean brand would have their 119 item checklist of all the things that encompass the brand Mr. Clean. White shirt, bald guy, one earring, arms, tattoo, yada, 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 yada. Okay? These articles tend to look at a different view of branding, and it's more that the brand and brand meaning is created by the community and the groups in this Web 2.0 world, not the corporation dictating what the brand would mean. Next week when we meet in person, we're going to play the brand game, the Dr. Dano brand game. So please remind me to start class with the Dr. Dano brand game. So let's get into some of these articles and see how I can be helpful. All right. Welcome to the Experience Economy. Yes, this was written in 1998, but this was a classic of classic beyond classics. This article really sets the stage for branding and experience in this module. And although I don't have to, there's a lot of other different Pine articles we have this semester. Both Pine and Gilmore wrote some excellent books. You know, you'll see more of these guys later in this semester. Big time consultants. But the key to this article really is the second page, which is page 98. You know, if you just wanted to look at one page in this table at the bottom, this is really where we're at. You know, how we've gone from commodities to goods to services and now experiences. You know. All right, let me answer some questions. Nearly all the experiences have been created by the work of others. Yes? Is the experience economy really about its own thing or just delivering a method of goods and services? Well, this article doesn't necessarily talk about self-experience. For instance, my kids a couple weeks ago went to Build-A-Bear, and they made a Star Wars teddy bear, actually two of them. One was a stormtrooper, and one was the X-Wing pilot Poe. Okay? This is a much stronger experience, a much stronger brand connection to my kids and Build-A-Bear and their bear. Not just because they went to the store and bought it, but they created it. They put a heart in it. They picked which set of stormtrooper guns the bear is going to carry around. Doesn't always have to be the work of others. If you think about, every one of us have gone to very cool restaurants, but a lot of us have gone to the Melting Pot. Yes? And that is really a lot on your own. But that is an experience, how you get to play with the sauces and do all that other stuff. How do we improve our personal brands as business people by leveraging experience? Well, you add elements that someone gets to do something. Someone gets to play with something. Someone gets to participate in something. That's the idea of experience. The brand as a static entity, I would like to remove from your memory bank. But the brand as experience, the brand as doing, playing, behaving, using, that's experience. What are the limits of experience? Well, I could see consumers get experienced out if every business is focusing on creating something unique and interactive. I'm not going to agree with you. I am not going to agree with you. Now, would you be upset if you went into a 7-Eleven and you just wanted a Coke? You just wanted to get in and out? Well, sure. But for those of you who have been into a Wawa compared to a 7-Eleven, you don't get experienced out. It actually makes you feel better to be in there. It's a better brand experience. Of course you're looking for things that are unique and interactive. Would it be worthwhile for a store like Sharper Image to invest in selling the experience? Well, I think that's kind of what Sharper Image used to do and Brookstone currently does now. How much would it really cost to host demonstration or showcases if they were charging a small admission? Well, I know the article talks about admission prices, and we start getting into a movie theater-like experience, or we start getting into, theme park-like experiences. You may or may not have little kids, but about 30 minutes north of New York City, there is a Lego Superstore. It's a Lego branded, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not a theme park, but it's very much like a theme park, because it's not a park. It's the size of a Super Target. It's indoor, and it is an experience beyond experience. I don't know how little kids would not be absolutely enthralled by this place. I'm trying to think of where it is. It'll come to me. It's in New York. It's as you're getting towards Connecticut. It's amazing. I don't know if Sharper Image could do that, because their main way of monetizing is to sell products and goods, whereas the Lego store or a theme park would be their main way to monetize is to get people to come through the gate. In the article, it mentions that the experience at Disney retail stores outside the Disney theme park is inconsistent with the experience in the parks. Agreed. Has Disney rectified this? No. Do you think it's important or valuable for Disney to provide customers with a similar experience in retail stores as it provided for their theme parks? Point blank, the Disney retail stores in the theme parks are run by Disney. Disney retail shops that you go into a mall are not run by Disney. They're run by another company that uses Disney as a brand with Disney's merchandise. They're not trained the way Disney people in Orlando are trained, or California. They do not have the same experience. It's just a retail store that happens to have Disney stuff. Personally, Disney would be much better doing what they do in Florida, the way, what's the name of these expensive dolls? New York City. American Girl dolls. I mean, there are 5 American Girl doll stores on the East Coast. Maybe not even 5. Boston, New York, Virginia, Miami, Florida, maybe? I don't know. Disney might be better having a dozen and a half unbelievable experience locations as opposed to what they currently do now. How do we offer our experiences to our customers if we sell information? Well, in this article, and as in the other articles, it's about touch points. The various places that people could get information, how they get the information revealed to them. Is it more in an education setting? Is there a professor of wine, for instance, where you would get wine information? Is it entertaining? Is it gamified, the gamification of the information? Could the information be in a crossword puzzle, and you have to solve it in order to gain the information? When does a company know when to outsource or do labor themselves? Time is money. Well, I think I just gave you a good example here with Disney. I'm more, if you are a zealot of the brand and you want to protect the brand and you want to train your employees for experience, you're not outsourcing anything. It depends. Look at 7-Elevens again. We'll go back to this example. They are technically outsourced because they're franchises. But then look at Wawa's. There's no Wawa's that are a franchise. And you wonder why the service experience is so consistent across Wawa's. Starbucks. Any franchise Starbucks? Very, very few. Most Starbucks that you go to are not franchised. I mean, there are situations where they do sell franchises, like inside a Marriott or inside a university, or then you have a larger entity buying the Starbucks store for that particular location. But in the United States and in Canada, the overmajority, 90+% of all Starbucks you go to are company-owned stores. Why wouldn't a mall that charges for admission keep the malls free for those passerby shoppers who would only stop by to purchase something? This was 1998. He's riffing on a theme here. No malls are going to charge for admission. I mean, if you want to call Costco a mall, Costco charges an admission by having a different kind of a fee structure. But malls, not really, no. Why do some companies find it so hard to keep their experiences fresh? Well, because they rest on their laurels. They like to do the same thing again and again and again and again. And you have to understand that people want new experiences. Can't keep doing the same thing. After reading about the experience company, the leader in the field that comes to mind is Disney. Agreed. What other companies do you consider to be on Disney's level in this area? Well, if we think about retailers, Bass Pro Shops are spectacular. If you ever been to the L.L. Bean store up in Maine, spectacular. If you ever been to an REI store, spectacular. Absolutely, positively. But you could also go into Tiffany's in New York, and that's an experience. American Girl for little kids, Lego. Which industries do we see moving into the experience economy first? All of them. Hell, if healthcare doesn't understand this, there isn't one industry that I can think of. I mean, there's a lot of boring education universities out there. The more experience it is, the better you like to go. I mean, people talk about Notre Dame because, you're on campus and you're in South Bend and there's a fire company and there's the grotto and there's the blah, 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 blah. It's all part of the experience. These are all touch points. I don't see how any industry wouldn't want to be involved in this and the satisfaction, loyalty effects that experience brings that non-experience does not. Link to previous week's articles. Taking this company as an example, how does Walt Disney Company learn how to compete in the experience company? How does Walt Disney Company learn how to compete in the experience company? I think they rule, There's very few companies on the level of Disney that do it as well as they do. I don't think they have to worry about competing. Okay, first article. Good. Yes. Next article, branding. Little highlights about branding. I think this is a excellent article. It's not just because I've met the guy and he took me out to dinner once, but Doug thinks the way I think of branding. Let me rephrase that. Because the way Doug thinks about branding, I think about branding, which means that the brand is more in the user's mind, in the crowd's mind, as opposed to Procter & Gamble deciding what the brand is. If you're looking for good books, in between now and next week, I've been getting emails about books. Some of you guys are traveling. We have spring break coming up. This is a solid branding book if you like branding. His second book, Cultural Strategy, is not only branding, but a little more leadership and overall corporate strategy. In the same vein, Grant McCracken's the Chief Culture Officer is an excellent fit for the bottom-up world and branding and creation and innovation. If you're looking for a leadership book, I've already talked about it before. Leadership Creativity Inc. This might be the best leadership book I've read in the last 5 years. Ed Catmull, founder of Pixar. Awesome stuff. We can talk about more on Monday. Does the brand put itself at risk by alienating large numbers of customers if it focuses on a specific subcultural myth? Well, if the brand is moving towards a subcultural myth that's away from what the majority of customers think, then yes. If the brand doesn't have a specific, strong identification with a particular fan base, then no. No. Like Harley Davidson right now, it already has the subculture myth. But Volvo does not. So I would recommend that Volvo should do something like this because it has no specific brand identity. Lenovo? Nada. How do these brands attract a dedicated following without cutting off their potential customers? Well, the assumption is they have a strong potential customer base. If they do not, then you find a strong customer base and you wrap a myth around that and give your brand to that base. How can we as managers become more proactive when cultural shifts and realigning brand positioning? Love this question, and you know what I'm going to say. Going back to Week 1, it's because managers are not reactive to what's happening in the marketplace. You are market-oriented, and you see the cultural shifts happening in advance, or as they are happening, because why? You are externally oriented towards customers and competition, which is where these cultural shifts happen. Thank you, whoever asked this question. You get a thumbs up. Focusing on American myths may be alienating to global audience. What global myths should marketers tap into? Really? Well, that's the question, you know? But we can go into social media listening tools. We can go into Twitter. We can go into Facebook. We can go into Instagram. And we can listen to see what audiences like. It doesn't have to be the Southern slacker. I mean, it just so happens that Mountain Dew is more of an American story and American brand than it is around the world. But Coke doesn't have to do the same thing. Coke can pick happiness, and happiness works across the globe. That's really up to the firm doing the research about its global population. And do you want to pick a local myth, or do you want to pick a global myth that marketers should tap into? How does a corporation decide on what subsegment of the audience they're going to target, i.e. Mountain Dew and the hillbilly redneck slacker? Well, we can ask Javier on Monday, because he was actually working at Pepsi when a lot of this stuff was happening in Mountain Dew. In the past, it was more of a top-down thing, and hopefully the firm went out and got marketing research and had strong consumer data for them to decide on which myth and which brand positioning they should select. Focus groups. We have that focus group room up in the 6th floor. In today's day and age, the crowd does a lot more proactive, pro-social behavior, word of mouth, and we can listen on social. So we might have a stronger feeling from social that we can then test and verify and then work on a brand image that's better for the particular crowd. Questions. In the 5 criteria to create an icon worthy of a myth, it talks about how icons do not have a certain DNA. Companies like Versace, Dolce & Gabbana focus on their DNA. Are companies like these not considered icons? Is it the lack of DNA necessity to be an icon? Well, I think what you're saying more than DNA is Versace has a strong brand identity. D&G has a strong band identity. But, if we were to turn back the clock, Versace was a much bigger deal in the 90s. Okay? It was much more stronger tied to popular culture than it is now. There are much bigger fashion houses now than Versace. Okay? And it's because Versace lost some of its cultural currency. You know, whatever it's doing, it's out of step with in fashion more than anything else. My gosh. If you're not paying attention to what's happening in fashion, you can so quickly be out of fashion, you know. So D&G, it has its particular DNA, but how do you tie their DNA to what's happening culturally? In class, we talked about Javier working in Mountain Dew during this time. What are his thoughts on creating an iconic brand? Well, unfortunately, my name is not Javier, and he is not here with me to answer this question. Monday, bring it up. I have no problem, which is why we meet in person. If Mountain Dew could change their overall brand message today, what would it be? I have no idea. I don't know. You know, this is not my wheelhouse. Sugary drinks. But I know that sodas in general are getting the wind kicked out of them from both the new age beverages and also the high caffeinated Red Bull drinks of the world in a can. How can managers learn to gain and incorporate cultural knowledge? Ooh, this is a good one. See, we have this word learn and we have cultural knowledge. Well, if you are not in a learning organization and your firm is not MO with the interfunctional communication, you already have 2 strikes going against you. But in my head, very much in the spirit of Chief Culture Officer, hopefully you have someone in the C-suite to argue for this for you. But even if you don't, a good market-oriented group of managers can bring the external data to the higher-ups. You have the conversation happening on Twitter, in Facebook, on blogs, on YouTube. Document it and share. And if no one's listening to you, polish that resume off and go to another company. How does a company become an icon by default of their service or product? By default? Or is there a strategy on becoming an icon? There are a few firms that get lucky at this. Okay? The story of Harley Davidson is, you can't make that up, you know. Its iconic status and its cultural brand myth and the corporation is so intertwined, you know, it cannot be contrived. So Harley Davidson is Harley Davidson because they are Harley Davidson. It sounds very odd to say it that way. But they have no choice. They do not. You know. But it is possible for a brand to take on an iconic identity. For instance, in the U.S., the cultural myth is rags to riches. Okay? That is a cultural myth that is strongly shared across every political party, socioeconomic group, ethnicity, age. If you earned it, it's yours, rags to riches. Okay? We don't have any problem with that. Could a brand adopt that as their myth positioning? It could. How could a competitor of an iconic company take the next steps in becoming iconic? You pick a different icon. You pick a different myth. You pick a different message. Hey, look, I love sci-fi, man. I am a fanatical nutjob Star Wars geek, okay? But I have no problem with Did I say Star Wars? I said Star Trek. I even messed up my sci-fi. Star Wars, fanatical. Hey, but Star Trek, I'm okay there. You know, Next Gen, Picard, Data, I'm okay there. It's a different story. It's a different myth. Just the last thing you want to do is be a motorcycle company and take the same myth as Harley Davidson. It won't work. Harley Davidson already owns that myth. I know this article discusses Mountain Dew becoming an icon, but I don't think Mountain Dew is an icon. Okay, you don't think Mountain Dew is an icon. It seems though Coke has much more of a presence and is more of an icon. Coke is a bigger brand, I'll agree with you. Do you agree or disagree with the article example using Mountain Dew as an icon? Mountain Dew is clearly an icon. It may not be as big of an icon as Coke. It's not as big as Harley Davidson. It's not as big as Apple. It's not as big as VW. But it is still iconic in that particular space. 13 years after this article is written, do you still say Mountain Dew is an icon? Yes. Do you think in order to be an icon, you have to be a rebel? No, but it helps. To speak in a rebel voice helps. You know, Apple did this for a very long time. They're still trying to do it, but it's hard to be the rebel when you're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. But it helps. It helps. Use the underdog's voice. You know, you're going up against the man. That is easier to sell than not. Do you think being an icon and being a rebel are synonymous? No, they're not. They're not. You could be iconic and not be the rebel. You can be the iconic and be the establishment. Okay? Harvard is not the rebel. They do not speak in a rebel voice. They have no problem being iconic. You know? Nope. Harvard Business Review, in my opinion, is the premier business outlet for key business thought. You can tell by the number of HBR articles we have in our reading list, right? Do they speak in a rebel voice? No. What is the single most important quality to have to become iconic? There isn't one unique quality. Iconic usually means no one else shares that spot with you. You own that particular niche spot, meaning whatever you want to call it. Is it rebellious? No. Is it being attached to a person? No. What is the key? It being unique. Harvard is Harvard. There is no other Harvard. To the point where people like to say the Harvard of the East, the Harvard of the South, the Harvard of the West, the Harvard of Canada, the Ivy School of Business. You know? You know, in Latin America, well, in the United States, we call them Band-Aids, okay? Latin America, they call them Curitas, and it's Curade, because J&J didn't get into Latin America first. So they don't say Band-Aids down there. They say Curad. You know, Curad, you know, it's not even a big brand here in the U.S., but it's huge in Latin America. Corita. I need a Corita. You know? The biggest challenge for staying relevant today. Amazon is iconic, but I'm not sure why. Why? Because they are the largest internet retailer in the world. Well, behind Alibaba. But I'm not sure why. How are they going to stay relevant? Well, Amazon's experience in shopping for products and services is the best, period, bar none. There is not a better digital shopping service, not a better digital experience than purchasing from Amazon. You don't even think about it. It's easy. Your credit card's there. It's safe. It's quick. You have stuff in your cart. You use Prime. You know? My gosh. How can iconic brands bring more important contradictions into society? Well, the important thing about contradictions is contradictions are memorable. Contradictions make you stand out. You know, that's a way you can become iconic, by being different and unique. Usually the different and unique people are contradictions in the norm. They are outside the box. They are different than everyone else. That's why they are a contradiction. You know? How does the multinational corporation maintain its icon in different cultures? Well, a lot of them literally change the messaging to different cultures. Look what McDonald's does to their menu around the world. Look what Coke does to their flavor around the world. We like sweeter things here in the U.S. Coke uses the same brand, but they modify the amount of sweetness per the country that they distribute in. Should you make changes different in cultures? Yes. Yes. I have no problem with that. Okay? Love this article. Wonderful article. I hope it's tattooed into your head. Love it. So we have some more newer stuff as we're getting more, as we always get into the further articles in this semester. Well, I do want to talk about in this article, if you switch to page 64, the funnel versus the loyalty loop. I like this. The traditional funnel is the top-down world. In the bottom-up world, we are talking about holding on to our existing customers using that CRM kind of a philosophy that we want to bond with them. We want them to buy more. We want them to do pro-social behavior. We want to maintain a relationship with these particular customers. And you know something? In the digital age, the easiest way to do that is through digital media. I like this article. Very good article. Touch points. There is something rather interesting in this article. Page 69. Starting the journey. That first paragraph. Starting the journey. In the last 5 or 6 lines of that paragraph, it says, the more successful initiatives we've seen, the Chief Marketing Officer has championed the pilot before the executive leadership team. The best results come when a bottom-up pilot is paralleled by a top-down CMO initiative to address cross-functional infrastructure and organizational challenges. Here we have a very interesting bottom-up, top-down conversation. It's bottom-up in terms of the user, the consumer, the buyer. You might have to have some top-down within the firm to make sure, from an MO perspective, market orientation perspective, that everybody is moving in the same direction from the top, the middle, and everybody down. Kind of interesting. All right, let's answer some questions. Should marketers spend more time focusing on upfront advertising and putting information in the right places for customers to consider and evaluate stages and focus on building blah, 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 blah. Depends on what you mean by upfront advertising. In the old top-down funnel world, we did lots of traditional advertising to try to create awareness and put people on the top part of that funnel, that the more awareness, hopefully we'll get more actual buyers. I'm more of a CRM mentality where we have an existing base of customers and we don't spend the money on traditional advertising like we used to, and we spend our digital marketing efforts learning from our customer bases and providing them more value. That's kind of where my head's at. I don't think that answers your question, but this article was one of the first articles to start advocating against a lot of top-down traditional advertising. It's one of the reasons why I like it. While the most powerful impetus to buy is someone else's advocacy, agreed. Many are not as connected to digital avenues of promotion. In today's day and age, more advocacy happens digitally than not, especially with younger generations. How much more effective are these vehicles now than in previous years when it's market expected growth deployment? Well, if you want to talk about Generation Y, the millennials, and you want to talk about Z's, my kids, everything is digital advocacy. It's all digital. It's all word of mouth. Go back to the Pinterest article we had before. How does this apply to impulse items that tend towards instant consumption, such as chips? Well, that is an impulse item. There's no funnel. There's no loyalty loop. At least not directly. You walk into a Wawa and you are more prone to situational effects. A display, a cheaper price, something that, someone next to you has. But if it's thoughtful purchase, if it's more higher involvement, then guess what? You're going to use more advocacy. You're going to do more research. You're going to do more thinking. You're going to do more loyalty loop. Who are the right people within the organization to manage the follow-up? You guys know by now I have a hard time with questions like this. In an MO world, I don't need to find the right department. We'll figure this out. But if the firm's market-oriented, you figure it out. Customer-facing, you'll figure it out. Is there an industry that you feel this will not work for? There are some highly regulated industries, military, pharmaceutical, FDA, drug kind of things. Stuff, doctors, lawyers, harder, services that are complex like lawyers and insurance, harder. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think that's good. When providing suggestions on how to implement a CDJ strategy, the article seems more marketing-oriented than market-oriented. Do you agree with their suggestions for new roles for the CMO? I would agree with you that this article was written from a CMO perspective, and they are advocating that the marketing people should take over the corporation. We've seen previous articles this semester that the marketing people should take over the organization. We will have one at the end of the semester called the Chief Marketing Technologist that kind of believe that the marketing department should take over the entire organization. I disagree. I'm an MO guy. How can a company better learn to understand their customers in terms of how they make purchase decisions? Well, if you have the CRM data, if you have the social media data, you look at the data. You're externally oriented. You're doing marketing research. You're doing secondary data research, which is the scanner data, the CRM data, the social media data. You're doing primary research, surveys, focus groups. You're externally oriented. You figure it out. What are some of the ways that marketers can manage the amount of content that is generated to increase efficiency? Well, you look for the keywords that are of interest to you. You look for patterns that are useful. You look for phrases, language. You may start off with like this much. You may work your way down to a certain set of keywords, 25, 30 keywords, that you're only examining Twitter for those particular keywords. But a lot of this is machine generated. So, we're not doing this manually. A lot of awesome, powerful social media tools out there. What should a company consider when deciding to advertise a certain product? Not a fan of advertising. Not a fan of traditional top-down media that I can't track. I don't know what to say here. Should a company invest a lot of money in a marketing campaign if it doesn't know what it will do? No. Why spend the money if you don't know what your return might be? Why spend the money if you can't track the results? It's like flushing your money down the toilet. I mean, the famous quote from John Wanamaker from 100-something years ago, Philadelphia retailer John Wanamaker, "I know I'm wasting half my advertising dollars, I just don't know which half." I don't want to live in that world, and we don't have to anymore. Between the digital technologies that we have and the fact that we should rely more on CRM than traditional top-down advertising, why are we doing that? Why are we wasting half our advertising dollars if we don't know what we're getting out of it? What are some of the ways that companies use customer information they collect? Well, hopefully to provide more value either through better product selection, couponing on the products that we like, information about new stuff that's coming along the pike about that particular product class. How successful are they? Well, look at Target. They're killing it. Look at Kroger. They're killing it. Look at Walgreens. They're killing it. CVS. You know, the data analytics that Amazon uses, it's fantastic. I ask because I always hear about information companies gather, but I never hear about practical uses of the information. Well, a lot of this is behind the scenes. I mean, you don't see Amazon's algorithm. You just see the recommendation from the algorithm. Okay, good one. One thing you must get right when building a brand. This article came from the same issue as this article. Okay, this article was better than this one, but I still kind of kept them together. All right. How do you determine what is your brand's promise and what isn't, particularly when you're trying to add features and products? Well, why don't you ask your customer base? In the old world, a brand manager would guess. They would say, well, this is what our company means. This is what Mr. Clean is. This is what our brand promise is. Therefore, this is it. I am the brand manager. I make the decision. I don't live in that world, and you don't live in that world. We live in a bottom-up world, and if you're not listening to the crowd, and you're not listening to what they want out of the brand, you're screwed. What are some of the examples of companies stumbling on social media by abandoning basic marketing and career? I saw this question. I got to come up with a good example. And I don't have one off the top of my head. But Google marketing fails, and you'll get a number of them. Companies saying one thing and the product doing something else, and you find out about that on social, or people are talking about it on social. You can't get away with it anymore as a company. Heck, look at Comcast. Perfect example. Listen, Google Comcast fail. Javier's laughing at me right now. Comcast fail. You don't even have to put the word marketing in there. Oh, you'll get so many customer service disaster scenarios. Oh my gosh. To the point where people, when they're on the customer service line with Comcast, that people record it just so they can put it on a blog. How does every brand have a place on social media? I'm not sure what you're asking there. How does every brand have a place on social media? Well, are there some company industries that don't benefit from being on social media? Well, how can I say this? In today's bottom-up world, the consumers are having the conversation anyway, whether you're part of it or not. So, do you want to not be part of that conversation? Do you want to let them talk and talk and talk and talk without you being part of the conversation? Or do you want to sit back and say, oh, it's easier for me not to get involved with that? The more consumer-oriented the brand, obviously, the more social media it is. The more B2B it could be, the less. But, you'd be surprised. People are talking about aircraft engines on social media. They are. Just not as much as Coke or Pepsi. The article says, although any company's decision about whether or how to use a new tool is situation-specific, all companies should incorporate social media into their marketing playbooks. Do you agree with this statement? Yes. Without a clear strategy, I don't agree, but I would like your thoughts on this. Well, I agree with the statement, but see, here is the thing. There's nothing in the statement about strategy. You can't just throw spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. You need a reason for being to do social. Could branding be your reason for being, and that's what your sole purpose is with social? I'm okay with that. Could customer service be your sole reason for being, and that's what you do on social? I'm okay with that. Could CRM be your sole reason for doing social? Very good idea. Could marketing research, consumer insight be your sole reason to be involved with social media? I'm good with that. But you better have a why you are there. You better have a strategy for being. Because without a clear strategy, I agree, you shouldn't be in social. But if you have a reason for being, and I have a lot of reasons for being that we're going to talk about this semester, I've already talked about 5 or 6 already, guess what? You should be involved. It's free, by the way. Who needs $6 million for a Super Bowl ad? All right, let me do a quick tangent here. Now that I'm all fired up. Oh, boy. See, you guys triggered a tangent. It's your fault. Twitter. Alrighty. Notifications. Oh, 5 notifications. What the heck am I getting notified about? Okay, Marseille retweeted my tweet. See, what did they retweet? Oh, that's what they retweeted. That's my flag from France, from my soccer team from France. Kind of hung it on a Seton Hall banner today on the way into school. That's not what I was going to tangent on you guys with. Hey, take a look at that photo. That's a pretty good one. Who is this guy who's in his own Twitter feed all the time? Let's see. Hey, look at this. I was goofing around when I was in France. 7-Up flavored mojito. Yo, 7-Up, please tell me I can buy this in USA. 7-Up. Dan Olag, negative. We definitely encourage you to make your own, given you're of age, of course. I mean, isn't that pretty cool? You know, why do I need advertising for me to now have a favorable brand position about 7-Up? They just sent me a tweet. It cost nothing. I am a much bigger fan of 7-Up than I was prior to them doing this to me. And did it really cost them anything? I think it's up here. Well, I'm trying to get to this link here about the Philadelphia 76ers had an article in the Inquirer, which is a my local paper, about the number of fans, the average number of fans watching a game. Well, the Sixers are up a lot this semester. They're up 45% compared to last year, and last year was abysmal. But then they went through the entire NBA. Obviously, because of Steph Curry, the Golden State Warriors are the most popular team in the NBA right now. They average about 225,000 viewers a game. Next in line, not surprised, is King James and the Cavs, and they're about 208,000, 210,000 people a game. 200,000 people a game. That's it. Heck, someone could go to a Viner, pay that Viner $15,000, create a Vine, and 1.5 million people see it in less than a day. You know? Are there companies that are overusing social media as a result of hurting their company? Not that I'm aware of. Granted, I'm biased. I am pro social media. But I can't think of one. Are there any examples of which a company so poorly used social media that it has drastically affected business negatively? Well, there are lots of companies that have poorly used social media, but they've mostly been one-offs. You know, a lot of times when, like Jamie Dimon during the financial crisis a couple years ago, he wanted to do a Twitter chat as the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, one of the banks that basically brought down the world economy. That didn't go over so well, you know. There's been a lot of companies that have made mistakes on social, but they've been one-off. What are some of the unwritten rules of social customer engagement online? Well, I don't know if it's written or unwritten, but social, the word engagement this is a real word here, okay? It's a dialogue. It's two-way. And too many brands are not doing what 7-Up did to me, or not doing what, who did we do in class? We had Virgin Airlines, yes? Too many brands we tweet at and they don't respond. There's no dialogue. There's no engagement. That's the biggest cardinal sin in my eyes. Can you give some examples of companies that keep pace with social media developments? Since social media is broad and evolving, what is more recommended and why? Well, my simple answer is podcasts. My simple answer is, having the cutting edge people come to your firm. My simple answer is having a really good firm in your back pocket, like a Deep Focus or an i360 or a Situation Interactive. That's how you keep pace. What are some of the biggest social media campaign flops in recent history? I think we kind of went there. Amongst all the social media advertising, Facebook, Twitter, which would be the best advertising strategy? First of all, it's not an advertising strategy. Advertising is one way and social is two-way. They're different. Second of all, it depends on what you want to do, and it depends on where your crowd is. Why do something on Twitter when 94% of your entire fan base is in Facebook? You go where the crowd is for your particular product. Certain things are substantially better to do on Pinterest than they are on Twitter. All right. A couple articles. We're wrapping up here. Truth About Customer Experience, another awesome experience article. It seems as if focusing on customer journeys is the more important in the companies that offer service or products with a large service aspect to them. How do companies that offer an off-the-shelf product with there's little customers... All right, hold that thought for 1 second. Let me pause. Truth be told, not only did I need to talk to my little ones not to interrupt, but my watch pinged me and said that I needed to stand up, so I took a 3-minute break. Well, the reason why we focus on customer journeys, if you think about it as a journey, you think about touch points. Therefore, there's more experience there. Service, by definition, because humans are involved, or you have to go to a particular location, it's easier to have more touch points. It's easier to have more of a journey. How do companies that offer an off-the-shelf product where there's little customer actually valuable in the journeys? Coke is doing some crazy stuff with vending machines. If you go to Japan, I've never been to Japan, but I've heard about the Japanese vending machine culture, that it is not just sticking your money in and getting something out, which is like not really that long of a journey and not really have that many touch points. There's more to it. There's beeps, there's warm tones, there's flashings of lights, there's more signals as part of the journey for your entire service experience with a vending machine. It's more enjoyable. It's whimsical. It's fun. Why not? Are companies too close to their own operations to accurately assess root causes, or is a third party necessary to truly diagnose core issues? Well, I think we've answered this question today. Regardless of whether they're too close or not, the company should not define everything. The crowd does, not the company. Maybe you use a third party to help you figure this out, but your MO, you're externally oriented, decisions are being driven by the market. What are some of the tailored metrics for each journey that can be used to hold on to relevant functions and employee accountable for I don't know. You have to decide what your key performance indicators are. If we are in, if we go to Disney, for instance, we're on a Disney theme a lot today. From the time you land at the airport and get on the Disney bus, to checking into the hotel, to going to a restaurant, to getting into a theme park, you could hit 100 different employees in about one day. They all have to be trained well. They all have to have the same, be evaluated on certain. But we're looking for specific things from the consumer. The metrics that we care about are happiness, satisfaction, repeat, curiosity, pleasant. We can decide what our key performance indicators are. I'm also gonna push this one off on Javier and get his answer to that on Monday. Remind me to ask. Are there reducible steps, i.e. a recipe, to identifying a customer journey? Or do they tend to exist on a company-specific product basis? I'm going to err on each journey is its own journey, and each product, the company has to figure out, it's more a product-specific kind of a thing. Even if you just look at the soft drink industry, the difference between Pepsi and Coke, the difference between Coke and Canada Dry or Schweppes and when they're used, those are totally different experiences. Have there been any studies measuring results stemming from efforts to manage a customer's journey as opposed to individual touch points, or just anecdotal stories related to the article? There is a very, very rich literature stream in the academic literature. We call it the service encounter. Okay? Sometimes we may say the customer's journey, but each one of these touch points are part of the service encounter. There's a serve qual, as in service quality, scale that's been used since 1985 in various industries. It was created by academics. You're measuring 5 different dimensions of the service encounter. The tangibles, which is like how beautiful the lobby of the place looks, or is the bathrooms all dirty. The personnel, empathy. There's a rich literature base here. There's an entire section of the marketing literature called services marketing, and you can look at service encounters. There has to be a couple hundred articles in there alone on service encounter research alone. Is it good or bad for a company to hire an outside company to take care of their customer service department? Bad. Not a fan. Not a fan. Maybe cheaper, but I'm not a fan. Because those external employees are not your employees. Do they really care? I mean, how great is it to walk into a 7-Eleven? How great is it to walk into a Starbucks? Should I say any more? You go into some McDonald's, they're okay. Some McDonald's, they're terrible. Why? How often does a company need to run a marketing campaign? This is still very old school thinking, a campaign, In today's digital age of bottom up and social, there's less campaigns and more dialogue. Are they constantly attaining new customers with different opinions, or is there ways to improve? You let the crowd interacts, you are part of the ongoing conversation with the crowd. It's less stunts, it's less tactics, it's less campaigns. This article does not talk about the evaluation metrics associated with customer journey mapping. What is the average ROI for spending time on customer journey mapping? Well, we got to depend on what your ROI key performance indicator is. If it is, for Wawa's, one of their key performance they want you in and out in 2 minutes or less. They want you happy. They want you to be a repeat purchaser. Wawa now has a loyalty program, a convenience store, where they can get better data on this. So we need more specific thoughts here to determine what the ROI is. But I like the question, and I like that you're thinking about return on investment, because one of the main reasons why I love all this stuff is because it's easier to think about ROI when we're doing the tracking. Regarding the embodied cognition idea, is it that means what we do innovating or ad promoting, we have to consider all the following: touching, saying, we are trying to create a memorable experience as part of the journey, right? The more you engage the senses, the easier it will be to imprint into your neural net. So we're always seeing, but if we're seeing, hearing, and smelling, and touching, maybe tasting, well, guess what? We'll have a much easier time remembering that particular service experience. And by the way, this is not what embodied cognition is. We have another question coming up, and maybe I put it in the wrong bucket. But how does the company improve on customer experience? Well, you listen to what the customers want and you give it to them. That's what I would do. Why your customers' social identity? Oh, by the way, if you're looking for a book example, this book that's mentioned in here, and the author is K.R.I.S. Krishna. Consumer Sense, the 5 senses that influence buying behavior. This would be a great book for this class. Now we're getting to our newest article. Actually, these 2 articles were brand new for this year. Never been used in the Dr. Dano seminar. Is it easier for a brand to give consumers a new social identity or to build a product around a long-standing one? I think you build a product around a long-standing one, which is what Mountain Dew is doing, is what Gatorade is doing, it's what Harley Davidson is doing, it's what Apple is doing. How does brand positively interact with someone who uses it but does not fit onto their social identity? Well, think about it as brand functions, okay? Oreos, for instance, is very whimsical. Whatever particular holiday is happening, like Valentine's Day, well, there was Oreos with red filling instead of white, and maybe they were shaped like little hearts. Well, that has nothing to do with being health conscious, and that fits another function, an attitude function, which is a person is not only health conscious, but they're also fun and easygoing. Well, a fun and easygoing person would be whimsical and buy a heart-shaped Oreo or a holiday-themed Oreo. It just has a different function, a different attitude function. Knowing that customers may have multiple identities, how can a company use this to their advantage without spreading itself too thin? Well, I think I just kind of gave you an example there. But the important thing is to latch on to a loyal community, and you can't be everything to all people. That's not what a brand is. A brand is iconic to a particular customer base. You create a product for that particular customer base. If you want to hit another customer base, you come up with another product. Which is why Harley Davidson wanted to come up with performance motorcycles, and they bought a performance motorcycle company called DEULL or something like that. And the word Harley Davidson wasn't anywhere on that. McDonald's created Chipotle. They eventually spun it off, but that was a McDonald's creation. What are some of the other examples of notable pivots in ad messaging like that of Netcafe? Oh God, this is we could go forever here. Too many to mention. In reference to Doritos Super Bowl example in the reading, in your experience, what makes for a successful Super Bowl ad? Okay, different kind of a commercial, but I'm going to answer it. Different kind of a question, but I'm going to answer it. I'd love to hear Javier's thoughts on this one as well, because he's been involved with Super Bowl advertising in the past. It's the Super Bowl. It's a party. It's a fun atmosphere. Entertaining, fun, laughable stuff works best in that environment. How do you use your social identities with your work with the Super Bowl social media team? Well, we had to create this was our biggest challenge, really. we did not have a strong identity as the world's largest concierge desk. So we had to, for the people who didn't know, to tweet at NYNJ Super Bowl or use the hashtag and questions. We had our own unique Twitter handle. We had our own unique hashtag. But still, people that didn't know that identity or that brand, we still used the social media listening tool to answer questions that weren't even directed at us. Can peer pressure persuade a customer to buy something they're not such a big fan of? Yeah, social pressure could. Keeping up with the Joneses could. Sure. Does it happen? Of course it happens. Is there a group of customers that are satisfied with the company's product and publicity, show their satisfaction? Wouldn't that be great marketing? And the amazing thing is the marketing is done by the consumers. I think I just showed you an example with 7-Up. Good question. I gave you an example. We're good there. For companies, is it more important to focus on consumer behavior or attitudes? Why is there an or here? Make it and or. Why is there an or? Why do you focus on one? Does social identity mean that following the mainstream in a different specific social groups? No. Just social identity means that you have a particular identity and it can be tied powerfully to a particular group. And you like to identify with a particular group. We have it hardwired into us that we like being in a group. We're not isolationists. Is the effect of idolatry a special case of social identity? I don't know about special case. A particular social group having an affinity for a particular idol or individual or celebrity. There are fans of Elvis still. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Regarding the embodied cognition idea, what does it mean when we do an innovation or an ad? Didn't I kind of had this one already? And by the way, this is probably for the next article. But to summarize embodied cognition, our brain has two systems. System 1, the automatic, and System 2, the thinking and the processing. The automatic are mental shortcuts. Okay? Believe it or not, when we drive a car, we are in System 1 automatic mode. We are. System 2 is when we're taking the SAT exam, when we have deep thinking and we're trying to figure it out. Your mind is lazy. It doesn't like to be in System 2. It only likes to be in System 1. Right? Because System 1 doesn't take a whole lot of cognitive energy. Now, because the brain likes to be in System 1, or as much as possible, there are scenarios where we take shortcuts, which is why when we smell cinnamon, we think it's working better. That's the embodied cognition. That is our brain, the way it is wired, making connections. Certain colors seem more, we see certain colors and we're very happy. It would be weird to go out and see an army movie or a war movie and everybody's wearing pastels. Cognitively, that doesn't work for us. But if we see fatigues, we're already cognitively locked in because our brain uses System 1 and we already have those mental cues that, oh yeah, this is war. Sensory marketing. That was a sensory marketing question. I have some of these in the wrong spots. One example in the article was the smell of cinnamon given the perception of a heating pad being more effective. Knowing that does it not actually make the product more effective. Could this alienate some consumers who may view it as manipulative? Not if they think the product is better because it's cinnamon. If they believe it is, and all you're doing is giving them a flavor, you're not telling them that cinnamon is better. You're just telling them that it's cinnamon, and it happens to make them think that it's better. I don't see how that's manipulative. How do we reach other senses in the digital age? Well, granted, taste is tough digitally, and smell could be tough digitally, but sight is not, hearing is not. There are still senses we can use. When products are just being sold off the shelf, what are some of the tools to help activate other senses than just sight? Well, every store that you walk into the mall has a signature scent. It's not an accident that when you're in a mall and you walk into a department store, the first set of counters are what? Perfume. When you walk into a supermarket, you ever notice that supermarkets are all right-handed, pretty much? You walk into the right-hand side of a supermarket. You walk in, the first thing you see, the fresh fruits and vegetables and flowers. Why? It's very colorful. They want to engage and pop up your senses with the colors and the smells. And always, the bakery is always somewhat close to the front entrance of a supermarket. Why? You smell fresh bread, you get hungry. And you see all those cakes and all that stuff. In your opinion, what sensory cues are the strongest in terms of marketing efforts? I heard that smell is the strongest based on where it's located in the brain. Appreciate your perspective as well. Smell is the strongest of the 5 senses, period. Smell has the strongest connection to your neural net and recording and recalling a memory. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's been tested. Do you have another example of consumer branding using sensory marketing really, really well? I just gave you the supermarket example, but walk into a theme park. Spectacular. Look at a movie. I just saw Star Wars. Fantastic. I saw 3D IMAX Star Wars. Digital sound, 3D imagery, had a blast. The hair on my arms moved. It's fantastic. How do you know if a customer bought a product through sensory marketing? How can you keep data for such a technique? Well, you can listen for it on social media. You can do follow-up focus groups or marketing, or you just have tests. They may not realize it was sensory marketing, but you can prime certain senses and see where in the store they reacted to the sense. This side of the store there's smell, this side of the store there's no smell. This side of the store there's more colorful background, this side of the store. You can experiment. You can test. Is sensory marketing more important or less important than advertising, market, or loyalty program? Sensory marketing is something you use as part of a marketing campaign. I don't see it being different than anything else. Loyalty programs or CRM is a philosophy that you use for marketing. I am a bottom-up MO guy. I have no problem with MO people using sensory stuff because it creates a better experience. A better experience equates to more loyalty. How can companies that are entirely online utilize sensory marketing in order to influence? I think I already answered this question. Is this current time? It seems sensory marketing is fairly new. It is not. We've been using sensory marketing for a very long time. Look at images of Times Square from the 40s. Nothing but flashing lights all over the place. What happens when every consumer company is using sensory marketing? Do you think consumers would become overstimulated when it loses its effect? This does create clutter. And you got to break through the clutter. Yes, this is very challenging. This is very challenging. Hopefully, if you're in a particular store, you're in a particular environment, you're not competing against other companies and you can control the sensory marketing. They use that as an example in the article about giving a pencil to the brand, but what if all pencils are doing that? Agreed. And then it can't be just sense, it had to be sense and tactile. I remember reading the Johnny Ive biography, and Johnny Ive likes all of his products to have a fiddle factor, meaning when it's in your hand, there's something tactile to it that rubs in your hand that you feel it all the time. He created a pen that had a little clicker thing and up near the front that you kind of would always be fiddling with because it's sensory oriented. How does sensory marketing affect the bottom line? Sensory marketing creates more loyalty. More loyalty and repeat purchasing CRM increases your bottom line. Do the increase in sales would be enough to offset the cost? Hell yeah. I don't see Disney having any problem in their theme parks. For example, adding a scented oil to pencil increases the cost of it. Yeah, but if you can charge more for the pencil or you can sell more pencils, then no problem. What is the role of Hofstede's model in social identity? Well, Hofstede is classic of all classic. We do not have a Hofstede article, but I'm going to talk about it briefly here in our last nugget of the day. Hofstede looked at culture around the world. For instance, the United States has an individualistic culture, and many of our Asian nations have a collectivist culture. Okay, so an expression in Japan, obviously I don't speak Japanese, but the expression is something like, the nail that sticks up too high gets hammered down. Well, in an individualistic culture like the U.S., there would never be an expression like that. We're rags to riches. If you earned it, it's yours. We have no problem with individual social identity. We have no problem with social media the way we use social media here. But the way we use social media is different than the way they use social media in other parts of the world. There's less me in collectivist society social media. So there are, in the U.S., we build McMansion housing communities for an individual family with 3,500 square feet and a 3-car garage. In other parts of the world, there might be 3,000 square feet or 3,500 square feet houses, but it's 3 generations of families in that house. And the house has subdividers and, various other cues where there's a communal area and there's separate kitchens here and because in a collectivist society, grandma and grandpa live with you. Grandma and grandpa live with you. You'll have 3 generations of family under one roof. All right. Awful lot for Branding 1. I'm sure you guys are looking forward to next week as well. We'll be in person. We'll chat more. We're out of here.